In the dead of night, as people sleep, that is when the spirits creep. As the bell tolls 3, dark things take power. We like to call it the supernatural hour. And now, our hosts.
Welcome to the Supernatural Podcast Hour.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Me too. So with us we have...
Doc.
And we have...
Merlin.
I have to tell you, we were trying to think of a nickname for him, and I was just thinking, and I finally texted him and I said, hey, what do you think of the name Merlin? And he said to me, my wife said the exact same thing. And I'm like, well, it's a done deal then.
Nailed it.
If Mallory says that's the deal, that's the deal.
Yep. Mal locked it down.
Happy wife, happy life. That's how it goes, right?
Exactly.
So,
And Chad's here too.
Oh, hello, Chad.
Hello, Chad.
Hi, Chad.
I live with him, so I should probably acknowledge him so he doesn't stab me in my sleep.
And the person that is talking there is Raven.
I'm Raven. One thing we want to do is welcome our new investigators. We have had a couple of openings, so just a little shout out to Candace, Lori, Sylvia, and Kason, who just started yesterday, actually. So he is an investigator in training. And we still have a couple of openings if anybody is interested in becoming a member of the APS WISPs team. If you are, just go to advancedparanormal.com. The very top, they'll be on the right hand side. It'll say contacts. Click it. It should have a
Application
and send that in. Or you could go to wisps.org. Same instructions. Slide over to where it says contact. Fill out the application. The reason we need the application, it just lists all the information right in a nice little handy place so that when I schedule things, I don't have to text you every time. And when you're available, I know all the stuff.
Don't forget the liability form for possessions.
Exactly.
That's on them.
It's all on you. So as far as residentials, it's actually been a little busy. We had one we had to reschedule a couple of times, and then the client ended up having a medical situation, so we will schedule that later. But we had two. One was in North Utah County, and this was a very interesting one. In the home, there were some mental health issues that have since been resolved. People might be going, how do you resolve mental health issues? Well, it was resolved. We don't want to give out a lot of information, so we will just leave it at that. But some of the things that were happening, there was a missing bracelet.
Give them the example of how the bracelet was missing, because that was phenomenal.
Yep, I was just going there. They had a little family get together. The bracelet just kind of popped off her hand, and it was one that had meaning to her. It wasn't just, a random bracelet. It had some meaning. So they were looking for it, and she said there was about 13 people there.
Yeah.
And looking, they couldn't find this bracelet anywhere. They'd kind of been horsing around a little bit.
And in the same room. They hadn't left from the time that it had been, when I say lost, or came off of her wrist.
Right, because a necklace or a bracelet breaks, and it's just going to kind of, fall on the ground or maybe get flinged off into a corner. They looked everywhere. And finally, after about 10 minutes or so of looking, they gave up. They thought, it'll turn up. And as they're standing there, they said it literally just kind of materialized in the middle of the room and spun around and dropped on the floor. And they said the whole room, 13 people were looking at it going, did you see that? And I was like, I want to see it.
That would be wild to see.
Yeah. And
I would like to see that.
This family seemed like a very credible family.
Yeah,
This wasn't, you get some and it's like, this seemed like a very credible family, and there were like 4 witnesses that were at that deal that were there and talked about it.
Yeah, they also said they had a little dog, a little puppy, and he would stand at the top of their stairs and bark down the stairs. And you say, well, puppies, good heavens, they bark at everything. But he would tuck his little tail between his legs and kind of run off, and then he'd peer around the corner. I mean, it was as though he actually could see something, and they would go down, there would be nothing there. Would go down to their basement, and she said nothing.
But they did have the fields when they went down.
Yes. Nobody likes the basement. in my history of anything, anytime, anywhere, nobody likes their basement. I've never heard anyone say, my basement's awesome. I'd love to spend lots of time down there.
It's my favorite place.
How about you, Merlin? Do you love basements?
I don't mind basements, actually. They just another room.
Yeah, for me, I used to spend some time with a great aunt, and her basement was, some of the rooms were fine, and some of the rooms were super creepy. If we could get past the creepy room to get into the good room was fine. So I think it just kind of depends on what's going on in your basement. Her other thing, and this I thought this was very interesting too, is one of the daughters, she was a younger teen, she said, so in Utah we had an earthquake several months ago, back in April.
March or April.
March
yeah,
or
right
April.
around COVID hit.
She said it was a pretty big one in a pretty populated area, because in Utah we do have a lot of little earthquakes, sometimes out in the boonies, because most of our population is in a pretty small concentrated area. But this one was a fairly big one, and she said that 10 minutes before the earthquake hit, it was early in the morning, it was about 7 in the morning or so, she was awake, and she saw a man in her room, and there are no men in this home. And it scared her, obviously. When we did the investigation, I guess the other thing, they just saw a lot of shadow figures.
Mm-hmm.
Just little people out of the corner of their eyes. And so that's the stuff that they had going on. We did some EVP sessions, we took some photos and videos, and this one we did very, very recently, so I haven't had time to review very many of them.
You set up your laser grid?
We set up the laser grid. We did get one kind of suspicious picture in the laser grid. I have to look at it. Some of the anomalies there, I think, are reflections, but there's a couple little anomalies that I can't explain, so we'll get on that. But through just all the investigations that we did, we determined that the male spirit in the daughter's room was a protector spirit trying to warn her that earthquake was coming. And then he kind of hangs around the house and protects everybody.
But he's more protective of her than the others.
Yes. And we weren't quite able to determine why, if I remember correctly. And then in the basement, what was scaring the puppy was a type 3 spirit. No, I take that back, a type 2 spirit that was being controlled by a type 3. And the type 2 is actually sent there. The type 3 was aware of the vulnerabilities going on in the home and thought, this is a family we can target and, peck away at those vulnerabilities and hopefully ultimately drag them down to a very dark place. And so we sent him packing. But that was all the investigations we do really are great. I haven't had one that just really sucked.
But this one, when we got done, it was amazing how much time had gone by because it didn't seem like that long. And we were there for about 2.5 hours.
We were there for 2.5 hours, which shocked me.
Yeah,
because
when we got done, it didn't seem like that.
No, and it was midweek, and I thought, we don't want to keep kids up late for school. And I thought, we'll be here for an hour and a half, because we had to start a little later than normal. And as we were driving home, I was like, holy cow, it's 11 o'clock. I thought, sorry, kids.
Yeah, it's pretty late for kids going to school, but you got to do what you got to do.
They were a little older, early to mid-teens. So they were probably all like, yes. But their teachers hated us because they're probably crappy the next day. So the last one that we did was in South Utah County.
Oh, you missed an important one.
I did.
About the middle daughter and the name of her spirit guide. It was her.
So the name of her spirit guide was...
And her mother actually called the name beforehand or had it in mind.
Yes, and it was actually the name of her... You know how kids have imaginary friends?
Mm-hmm.
It was her imaginary friend. So was it an imaginary friend, or could she see her spirit guide when she was little?
Interesting.
And then with the bracelet, we determined that the bracelet was someone in the family who had passed.
That was trying to get their attention.
Just trying to get their attention and let them know that he was okay. And he wasn't no longer in the home, that spirit. So the one in South Utah County, somewhere, probably me, but somewhere there's a little communication breakdown when we were setting this up. And we went thinking it was just a cleansing. We thought that we were going to a home that some people had just moved into and they wanted it just cleansed, just to have a nice, new start to this home and get rid of the old energy and just have a fresh start. But when we got there, I thought, this doesn't look like people just moved in. And so we asked, and they'd actually been there for about 5 years. And so I said, well, have you had any activity? And oh, yes, they'd had activity, and it was, dark and kind of oppressive, and everyone felt doom and gloom. And I thought, I was not mentally prepared to do this, but you have to get mentally prepared fairly quickly. So we got mentally prepared quickly. One of the adults in the home was under a lot of stress, COVID-related, with a job, not with illness. And that had actually resolved, but some of the dark and the heavy feeling was still there. And again, it was negative entities that were there that were working on those vulnerabilities. And so if I'm going to give you, if you're listening, dark entities, dark spirits will look for those vulnerabilities and they will work on them. And they might sit and wait. They've got all the time in the world, but when they see that opportunity, they'll wake up, they'll perk up and they will work on those. So that's one thing you always want to do. If you don't want those negative entities in your home, try to relieve yourself of the stress. Try to, if there's anything that weakens you, try to push those aside. And by weakening, it could be things like, porn addiction or substance abuse, substance addiction, job loss, even things like just having very heavy, severe, unforgiving feelings towards someone can make you vulnerable for these. So, tip of the day, be happy.
Positive, be happy?
Be happy.
I think there's a song.
Don't worry.
And meditate.
Yes, because that's going to bring in the good vibes.
Yep.
Thank you, Merlin. Okay, Chad, how about giving us the business?
Okay. Giving us the business. Do you remember the referee that said that? That he's giving him the business? That was what he called?
That was awesome. It was a football game.
Football game.
I
He's
don't
giving
know.
he's giving him the business.
I don't know if that's an official football penalty, but
he got 15 yards for it.
I think I understood what he meant.
Okay, so in January, the Marcus's Warehouse investigation, unfortunately, is being canceled. They are going to be doing some additional work on that venue, and it's not going to be available for us. So
I was super sad. I got the text from our contact who lets us in there, and I ignored it for a day or two, hoping that it would go away. And then the contact emailed me and said, "Did you get that?" And I was like, "Dang it!" So I did try, folks. I tried to make it happen, but we can't make it happen.
We're hoping that will become available later in the year.
Possibly April, May-ish is kind of the tentative time we can get in there.
I was looking forward to that one.
Me too.
Hopefully we can reschedule.
And we'll look to see if we can get another investigation of some type in January together for that, to replace that. But there is no tickets on Eventbrite at this point and haven't been, so there won't be any refunds because nobody paid any money. Other business, in December, we have been giving to the Utah Food Bank, or encouraging people to give to the Utah Food Bank. That's always a great opportunity, but we just kind of wanted to mention that and say thank you to our listeners who did participate with that and helped out. This is a big time of the year for people, and a lot of people are in need of help.
Especially this year with COVID wiping out a lot of the smaller businesses and a lot of layoffs. This is a rough year for a lot of people.
Yeah, and if you can, look around in your neighborhood and your friends and see if there's people that are in need of help, and if there's things that you can do with them. This is a great time of year to help them out.